Jaguar-powered Lister versus Porsche at the head of the field. Tiff Needell on pole position in the Storm beside John Greasley in the Porsche GT. American Jake Ulrich on row 2 with Steve O'Rourke in the McLaren. A 50-minute race, a driver change between 15 and 35 minutes into the race and a rolling start. Tiff Needell closest to the camera in the Newcastle United sponsored Lister Storm. John Greasley in the Porsche on the outside as the horsepower is unleashed. Look back, 5th and 6th place. Jamie Campbell-Walter in the light, nimble Harrier battling with Bobby Burton-Rowe in the brutal TVR Speed 12. But it's John Greasley in the Porsche, takes the race lead into Riches. Tiff Needell already looking alongside there, using that 6-litre V12 to howl through in the Lister Storm, and it's into the lead for Needell. The Porsche gives best at Sear, down the Ayrton Senna straight, up to 200 miles an hour, heading into the S's, and it's the Lister Storm thundering away from the Porsche. Now, the Porsche sometimes takes longer to warm up its tyres, and this track is very greasy, so is Greasley now going to be able to fight back? But it's Needell through, oh, and you can see cars spinning. And that is Jake Ulrich, the American driver, spins out in the Lister Storm, the second of the cars. But the third Lister Storm is absolutely flying. 5th, 6th and 7th places. Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Harrier. Kurt Lurby in the Viper, now being passed for 6th position by Paul Evans in the Hewland Lister Storm. And that car started the race absolutely last. Across the line for number 2, Jamie Campbell-Walter, the light, agile Harrier, closing in on Bobby Burton-Rowe. 4th place for him in the TVR Speed 12. But look at the speed of Paul Evans. Campbell-Walter gives away nearly 100 horsepower between the Harrier and the Lister Storm. Just watch the power now. Evans excluded for speeding in the pit lane during qualifying. He's come through the field in just one lap to run in 5th place. That has to be one of the drives of the TV trophy. But it's the Lister Storm now moving through the field. Another Lister Storm in 1st place at the head. John Greasley in 2nd place in the Porsche. 3rd place, Steve O'Rourke in the McLaren. 4th place, it's the TVR of Bobby Burton-Rowe, with closing in fast now. Evans in the blue and yellow Lister Storm, and latched right onto his tail is Jamie Campbell-Walter in that Harrier. But what a great race for the TVR. Only its 2nd time on the track. It's running at the front, and Paul Evans is finding it very difficult to match it on the straight line speed into Riches. Onto the brakes though, the Lister Storm makes its way through, but up to Sear Corner and things are getting interesting. A localised shower of rain has got this part of the track wet, where the rest of the circuit is dry. Caroline Lucas makes her recovery in the GT2 Porsche. Well, Ian Flux is looking at the weather. He's going to need rain to catch up after his teammate Jake Ulrich has spun, and all the drivers are on slick, unthreaded racing tyres, riding with Steve O'Rourke in the McLaren, out of Riches, up to Sear. Oh, and he's hit the water. Keeps it all together, makes the right turn now across the old airfield dispersal site, rejoins the track, back in 7th place behind Jamie Campbell-Walter in that Harrier, and that little lightweight Harrier is thriving in these conditions. And so is the Lister Storm of Tiff Needell, now nearly half a lap ahead through Riches Corner, and looking back down the start-finish straight. Here is the 2nd place, John Greasley. He's lapping Martin Koenig, who is lapping Keith McKenzie in the Marcos, and the Marcos touches the pit wall. Drama all the way down the field. And Keith McKenzie, 2 laps down, is keeping going with the 6-litre Marcos LM600. A brush with the pit wall, the car's still running. But out in 2nd place, it's still John Greasley. There you can see that very slippery track section, the flames from the turbo reflecting off the tarmac. And recovering fast, Steve O'Rourke lapping the battle for 2nd and 3rd places in the GT2 production category. The McLaren goes past John Morrison and Stephen Day. They are 8th and 9th overall. And Morrison goes back past the McLaren. That Porsche is demon on the brakes. And John Morrison is determined to keep a car between himself and the class leader. Meanwhile, 2nd place man into the pits. John Greasley in, out of the car. Magnus Wallinder, the Swedish driver, takes over, heading for the pit lane as well. The McLaren right on the 15-minute point into this race. Steve O'Rourke prepares to abandon ship. He will hand over to Tim Sugden, regarded as the fastest man on the track in the Privilege Insurance GT Championship. Sugden climbs in from the right. Greasley exits on the left. And another great GT2 battle. Graham Morris in the Lotus. Colin Blower in the TVR Cerberus, and Blower rotates the big TVR right in the path of race leader Tiff Needell. Well, that's no problem for Tiff. The green flag is shown. He continues speed unabated across the line. And Needell staying out longer than the Porsches. Now that rainstorm's now moved to the S's, and it's very slippery. That's Ian Flux straight out of the pits, straight on over the grass. Caroline Lucas takes avoiding action in her Porsche. And Tim Sugden's got it all sideways as well in the McLaren. Oh, and Sugden spins it. His outlap from the pits. What a way to take over the McLaren. And he spins the car round on the grass, gets it all pointed in the right direction. But Sugden is going to have to stage a big fight back. He is down to 6th place now, and he's a whole lap down on Tiff Needell in the Lister Storm, who goes through ahead of him. Meanwhile, Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Harrier now up to 4th position. Oh, and Ian Flux is off this time much more permanently. Flux has damaged the bodywork on the number 8 Goldfish Lister Storm. You can see the damage on the left of the car. There's bits of spoiler hanging off. The splitter is damaged on the right side. And the leader is in the pits. It's Julian Bailey aboard the Lister Storm. 50-kilometre speed limit. Watch for the D-restriction sign, then listen to the howl. 650 horsepower of V12 Jaguar catapults the Storm out into 2nd place. It's Lister Storm's 1-2. Paul Evans leads, but he's still got to make his pit stop. Now Julian Bailey. Oh, and that's his main rival. Magnus Wallinder, the Swede, spins out after clashing with Paul Lee in the Quaife GT car. And the Porsche is stuck. It's spinning its wheels on the curbs. It's trapped in a very vulnerable position at the S's. It doesn't look as if the Porsche is going any further. Neither is Ian Flux in the Lister Storm. The Quaife GT is running again, but that looks as if it is limping. And the safety car is coming out onto the track. That will mean the cars will have to slow in formation behind Paul Evans. Well, Magnus Wallinder is in no doubt as to who was responsible for his accident. Meanwhile, we find out from Ian Flux what went wrong for him.
I really hadn't allowed for the conditions at the end of the straight, and unfortunately I did it twice. Just put it in 3rd gear, and it was just damp enough that as you turned in, I lost control because I was going too fast, so my own mistake.
And with the safety car on the track, the cars holding their positions, it's quick pit stops all around. Jamie Campbell-Walter handing over the Harrier to Nigel Greensill. William Hewland now aboard the Paul Evans Lister Storm. And it's the Harrier that's made the best pit stop. It is moving ahead as Magnus Wallinder makes his explanations in the pits.
When I was on the straight line, the Quaife car came out from the pits, and I overtook him before the Sears corner. What he didn't know, that it was very slippery. It has been raining before the S's. So he tried to overtake me again. As I turned in, we collided.
So the safety cars, flashing lights are out, the indication to Julian Bailey that the race will restart. No overtaking, of course, until they see the green flag. There it is now. And look at the McLaren behind. Tim Sugden laps Ian Astley in the GT2 Lotus. Going very quickly indeed, but Sugden is in 4th position. He's still a lap down on race leader Julian Bailey. He needs to unlap himself. Oh, and that's the battle between the Harrier and the Lister Storm, and the Harrier spins out. Nigel Greensill spins. Can he keep the Harrier going? It's still stationary at Riches, but William Hewland retakes that 2nd place. Its headlamps ablaze though for race leader Julian Bailey. He knows this circuit intimately. He tested here thousands of laps, driving the Tyrrell and the Lotus Formula One cars, then for the Tom's Toyota team based just down the road. And the Lister is carving its way through the traffic, past Mike Pickup in the number 40 Porsche, up to catch up to Gregor Fiskin in the number 42 car. He's 2 laps down in his GT2 machine, and Julian Bailey is flying. Oh, and off at Riches goes Martin Short, the Cambridgeshire driver, taking over the TVR Speed 12. He can get it back onto the track. The question is now, is he going to be able to hold his 3rd place? And the limping Harrier makes it back into the pits for Nigel Greensill. He was fighting for 2nd, now he'll be fighting for the placings, but still no problems at the head of the field. What a turnaround in fortunes for Julian Bailey. and the Newcastle United Lister team. They were out before the race even started in round 3 at Croft. Now they are heading the field in fine style, and closing in fast is Tim Sugden in the McLaren, through the S's down to the bomb hole. And the McLaren is obviously the fastest car on the track. He's trying to unlap himself because he wants to close in on the second place Evans and Hewland car. Third place currently for the McLaren. If it can find its way past the Julian Bailey black and white machine ahead, Tim Sugden may be able to make it to the checkered flag in second position. We'll have to wait and see. Both drivers now lapping Keith McKenzie in the Marcos LM600, still going despite brushing the pit wall. And now Sugden sees his chance down the inside of Julian Bailey. Bailey knows he's not fighting for the race victory, lets him go, but now watch Tim Sugden head down, charging through Riches, heading up to Sear. Flames from the V12 exhausts of the McLaren BMW. Now it's flat out down the straight, up into 6th gear, up to 180 miles an hour. Meanwhile, the second place car is almost half a lap ahead, out of the chicane. William Hewland crosses the line. It's a Lister Storm 1-2 as they go into the closing stages of this race. The question is, can Tim Sugden do anything about it in the few remaining laps? And Sugden is pushing as hard as possible, but that could be a problem. Dave Welch blows the brand new engine in the back of his Porsche 934, and that is leaving oil on the track. It could be a problem for Sugden. Sugden already laps Richard Dean, the GT2 class leader in the Viper. And on to the last lap of the race, Julian Bailey is working his way through the field. The car that failed to make the start at Croft is heading the pack towards the checkered flag at Snetterton. What a turnaround in just one race for the Newcastle United team. It's away the lads at Snetterton as for the final time through Corham. Julian Bailey is heading towards the checkered flag, and to rub it home, he is going to lap the 5th place Kurt Luby and Richard Dean Chrysler Viper, the leaders of the production class GT2. It's right on the line, class winner and race winner side by side. Victory to Julian Bailey and Tiffany Dell, the Newcastle United Lister Storm team. Kurt Luby and Richard Dean take the class victory in GT2, maximum championship points for them. But it's Bailey and Needell, Hewland and Evans, a Lister Storm 1-2, with the Rourke and the spinning Sugden third. But the Newcastle United lads can't believe their luck.
I know, can't quite believe it myself, Julian.
It was sort of counting down the laps. I was thinking something's going to go wrong in a minute, you know, just something's going to break. But and then I thought it might rain again and we'd spin off, anything might happen, you know, but we brought it through, and fortunately everyone else spun off, you know, because it was actually wet over the other side of the circuit and everybody went off at the end of the straight, except me, of course.
Of course. Good fortune for once for Bailey and Needell, and in the GT2s, Kurt Luby and Richard Dean winning once again, and they now look a very strong bet for the Class 2 title, a mighty 23-point lead. But the silverware and the champagne here at Snetterton goes to the Lister pair of Tiff Needell and Julian Bailey, courtesy of their first win of the season.